Welcome. This is Bill Swartz with Rideshare Redemption in Scottsdale. My story, from riches to rags to rideshare. Today the subject of conversation is changing the channel. Changing one's own personal channel. I've just emerged from several weeks of searching for new housing. Thankfully, it appears I've landed a 6-month extension on my current apartment. However, due to evictions and judgments several years past, prior to my homelessness in 2016, against the backdrop of a housing crunch here, I was forced to plan to live in my rented Prius as a first line of defense in 3 weeks, when I would become homeless once again. This was a shocking and traumatic revelation. To be honest, I truly abandoned in my heart a few days ago belief in everything I have been talking about here. However, Richard Rohr's material on transformation through descent helped me see that I have to be made to feel infinitesimal from time to time in order to look at myself closely enough to see the truth of something. And the truth of my life right now is that I just spent 5 years crawling up a mountain of glass to get myself back to sea level. And yet all it took for me to be staring homelessness in the face was a need to change apartments. Talk about lying to oneself about how far they have come. Just because it has stopped raining doesn't mean you're out of the rain. My pride is what has stood in the way. Now, before you say, I knew it, it's always pride that brings them down. Let's back up just a moment. Do you know the difference between pride and proud? This is about as nuanced as it gets, but if you work with me, I believe you may find some value here. Please indulge 2 short stories that illustrate the difference. When my life was cratering but not yet gone several years ago, my closest lifelong friend, who had become wealthy, offered to give me $1,500 so I could avoid eviction. It was an amazing life-saving move, and I said yes, thank you. It turns out he had a complicated mental construct he had created that it would be character building for me to humble myself in getting the money. When that plan unfolded, shockingly to me, I rejected the offer instantly. Do you think maybe you should be just a little more humble? He asked me. The most arrogantly selfish person I had ever known just asked me if I thought maybe I should be more humble. We never spoke again. If we had, however, what I would have explained to him was at that moment, standing proud was all I had. Remaining proud was what would keep me going. A few years later, I was living on the streets with my dogs, homeless. I met a much older, lifetime veteran of homelessness one night in Scottsdale. When I told him my story, he wanted to know why I wasn't reaching out to all these rich people I knew for help. Was it pride? I explained that no, it wasn't pride at all. It was that I felt so worthless, I just didn't want to trouble anyone with my piece of shit life. And he said, that's pride. And it was. How do we know when the thing that saved us yesterday will be the thing that kills us today? How does the snail know the shell that was a blessing yesterday is a burden today, and so he leaves it and ventures forward without? This weekend I changed the channel, both literally and figuratively. Up until now, I've had to admit to myself that this channel has been to a great extent an exercise in ego. That doesn't deny its sincere and hoped for value, but it does pull back the covers on what my problem has been for 5 years, such to not have progressed to security in that time. I desperately want to be somebody. This is what I miss most. I long for the days when I had credentials and a reputation. People asked for my opinion on key life and career issues and paid for that opinion handsomely. I was officially special. Officially. I thought this meant the world saw me. When I slid downhill into a seething pit of the unnamed, I became invisible to the world and have felt largely invisible until now. And in my invisibility, the me I was impressed with had no standing. I simply became another old man who effed it all up. And my struggle has been a struggle to emerge from that into somebodyhood once again. And so I went back to my brain for the answers. My brain is what had gotten me my first shot at somebodyhood. So why not use the same system to reclaim my spot? And so for the last 5 years, I worked as hard as anyone has ever worked to reclaim lost success. Career management, recruiting, publishing, writing, all of it great, and none of it worked. I was no longer the reputation and just had become a person with opinions. Meanwhile, countless hours passed. Thousands of hours passed. Hours I could have used to generate revenue being nobody. It turns out the job of nobody pays fairly well in some situations, like rideshare driving. I already know some of you think I'm being hard on myself, but let me show you how this affects the process. To me, the channel has been the priority till now, and driving, an almost necessary evil which supports the channel. Keep in mind the channel does not now and never would have the potential financially that simply being a great and consistent rideshare driver does. To translate to some of you what may be a story which has lost its way here, I have spent 5 years wondering if I should still be attempting to resurrect my old business based on its past value, or rather whether that suit of armor I once wore was now being used as a life preserver to no effect. It was the latter, and this brush with homelessness has shown a light on the issue by crushing me down to the point where I had to ask of my higher power, please tell me what I'm doing wrong. What change am I making as a result? I have already made it. I converted my top priority to driving for revenue and fighting hard to survive financially, not to be someone or regain a reputation. My goal is to drive almost all the time and to focus on maximizing my revenue, which means driving at whatever time makes me the most money. I hit 450 this weekend driving full-time into the early evening both days. I can see that my persona will be even more well-received by evening riders. And for the first time ever, as a result of it being people's recreational time, I was tipped by 50% of my passengers against a past average of 30%. I need to amass cash to pay off old debts to become houseable again. My mission is to make $1,000 to $1,500 to $2,000 per week going into the end of the year, working 7 days a week driving. I will update with a video here and there as I can. Wish me luck and much love to you all. Peace.